Mr. Brown's last dollar. Mr. Brown was poor, not the romantic kind of poor, like a hero from some old novel, but really poor, in debt with a maxed-out credit line and a fridge where only the light lived. He had $1 left in his pocket, not symbolic, an actual bill, a little crumpled and smelling faintly of desperation. He walked down the street, wondering what to spend it on. Coffee, a sandwich, a lottery ticket. At a flower stand, he saw a girl. She was selling flowers, fading blooms tied carefully with a pink ribbon. $1 a rose, sir, she said, with a smile worth more than all the flowers. Mr. Brown smirked. Great deal. $1 for beauty that'll be dead by evening. Sometimes an evening is worth dressing up, she replied. He bought a rose, and he walked home feeling as if he'd bought himself a small piece of spring. At the corner, he ran into his neighbor, Ms. Allison, a strict librarian with a cat and a permanent suspicion of anything that breathed. For you? She asked, surprised, looking at the rose. No, Brown said. It's for the kindest girl I met today. He held the rose out to her. Allison blushed for the first time in 10 years. Thank you, Mr. Brown, she whispered. The next day, Mr. Brown got a letter. Unexpected, official, stamped with a gold crest. The bank was forgiving part of his debt in recognition of your honesty and respect toward our branch staff. He didn't understand a thing until he saw the signature. Ms. Allison, branch manager, Citibank. Mr. Brown laughed. Turns out even $1 can be the best investment of your life. Part 2. The next day, Mr. Brown woke up early, his chest light for the first time in ages. A fine rain sifted outside, but to him it felt like the sky was rinsing the city fresh. He put on his old coat, the one that still remembered better days, and stepped out. The same flower girl was at the stand. There were more bouquets now, fresh, bright, as if the rain itself had given them life. Another rose, sir? She asked, smiling. I'm afraid I don't have $1 today, he said. That's okay. Sometimes a smile is enough. She handed him a small snowdrop. This one's a gift. He took the flower carefully, as if the stem were something more fragile. Hope. On the way home, Mr. Brown ducked into the bakery. The owner, Mrs. Clark, frowned in a worried way. Mr. Brown, I was just thinking of you. Someone paid off your tab from last month and left a note. For kindness. He stood there not knowing what to say. He thought that maybe the world wasn't so indifferent if you'd spent your last dollar on beauty at least once. That evening, he set the snowdrop in a glass of water. The light from the fridge fell on it softly, like a stage spotlight. Well, Mr. Brown, he told himself, looks like spring is beginning. The next morning, he woke to a knock. A postal courier stood at the door. Mr. Henry Brown, sign here, please. Who's it from? Not listed. Says to be delivered in person. Inside the box was an envelope and a small wrapped bundle. The letter read, Mr. Brown, sometimes kindness returns as quietly as it was given. Thank you for the rose. Allison. The bundle held a neat leather wallet. Not new, but solid. Inside, a business card, a small check, and a single dollar, pressed flat and faintly scented with flowers. In the margin of the check, someone had written in ink, sometimes the best place to start is with what you already have. Mr. Brown sat by the window and watched the rain for a long time. It felt as if each drop knew his story. What he felt was a strange calm, not from money, but from being seen as a person, not a debtor. That evening, he passed the flower stand again. You came back, the girl smiled. Yes, he said. This time I want a whole bouquet. Spring shouldn't have to be alone. She laughed, and in that laugh was something very much like the beginning of a new chapter. Part 3. A week later, Mr. Brown found work. Not at a bank, not in an office, but in a small bookstore on the corner of St. James. The store was called The Old Page. It smelled like dust, coffee, and paper dreams. The owner, Mr. Higgins, put it plainly, "I can't pay much, but books don't betray you." Mr. Brown smiled. That's plenty. He spent his days among shelves of forgotten novels and slim volumes of poems. Sometimes kids ducked in to get out of the rain. Sometimes old folks stopped by just to talk. Mr. Brown realized that listening to people was almost like reading. Every life a dog-eared story, but meaningful. One evening, the flower girl came by. "I work at a shelter now," she said, "with kids. Sometimes they don't even have books." "Books?" Brown asked, eyes brightening. "Come back tomorrow. I'll have a stack of fairy tales for you." The next morning he gathered old editions, worn but soulful, and took them himself to the shelter. The kids met him as if he'd brought miracles rather than books. One boy, maybe 8, asked, "Have you ever been a hero in a book?" Brown smiled. "I think I'm starting to be." From then on, he went every Saturday, reading aloud, mending old books, bringing chocolate and snowdrops. People in town began to recognize him, nod, and smile. Even Ms. Allison, passing by, said one day, "Mr. Brown, you've turned your poverty into a story." He blushed and answered simply, "Sometimes to become rich, you have to spend your last dollar well." Months passed. The Old Page became a place people came not just for books, for quiet, advice, a smile. Mr. Brown learned to brew coffee right on the counter, and the aroma mingled with the smell of paper and rain. One afternoon, a woman in her 40s came in, tired, with worry hiding in her eyes. "I need something hopeful," she said. Brown thought, then pulled an old, scuffed book from the shelf. "Here, light at the end of the street. No author listed. But you know, sometimes books choose us." She smiled, took it, and a week later returned. Not just to return the book, but with a pie. "Thank you," she said. "It's been a long time since I cried because of kindness." After that, people began leaving little offerings. A jar of jam, a bundle of knitted scarves, a thank you letter. Someone hung a sign on the door. "Mr. Brown's Bookshop, where books mend hearts." The flower girl stopped by often too, telling stories about the shelter and about a boy named Jake who wanted to be a writer. "He says he wants to write about people who don't give up." She laughed. "Sounds like he already has a good hero," Brown said. Sometimes in the evening he sat by the window and wrote in an old notebook. Other people's stories. A widow who feared leaving home but started Sunday walks. A barber who gave free haircuts to the homeless. A girl selling flowers in the rain. He didn't know why he did it. He just felt that when you write the world down, it turns a little kinder. One day, Ms. Allison came into the shop. No stiff suit, just a simple shawl. "You're busy these days, Mr. Brown." "Books draw light," he said. "Sometimes people do too," she added, picking up a slim book of poems. She left an envelope on the counter. Inside were a business card and a note. "If you ever decide to open a branch of your kindness, Citibank is ready to help." Brown smiled. He understood. This was only the beginning. Part 4. A month later, Mr. Brown did it. He rented a tiny space on the next street, a former workshop whose walls smelled of paint and hope. On the door, he hung a hand-carved sign, "A home for books and hearts." He didn't call it a library. He said, "Let people come not only to read, but to sit in the light a while." On the first day, 3 people showed up. A girl from the shelter, an old man with a cane, and the same woman with the pie. They sat at one table, read, and kept a comfortable silence while snow fell outside. "Looks like we've got a club," Brown said, pouring tea. Slowly, the home for books and hearts came alive. Kids painted quotations on the walls. Students brought stacks of old novels. A baker left a basket of rolls every Saturday. Ms. Allison sent new shelves and even allowed a notice to be posted at the bank. "Bring in a book. Earn interest in kindness." Sometimes Brown felt bone-tired. Late evenings when the city slept, and he still sat sorting letters. One, in wobbly child's handwriting, read, "Mr. Brown, thank you. When I grow up, I'll help too. Not people, books. They get old sometimes." He laughed and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. At night, when everything was still, he'd step outside to look at the city lights. Once they felt like they belonged to someone else. Now he felt that each one glowed a little thanks to his last dollar. As days went by, the home got busier. In the mornings, school kids stopped in for warmth and stories. In the evenings, seniors came just to sit among living voices. A boy brought an old guitar and strummed while someone read aloud. A girl from the shelter hosted fairy tale days, where everyone added a line. Mr. Brown didn't manage the place so much as smile, brew tea, and sometimes write down what happened. He didn't know why, maybe to remember how light is born. One evening, a young man in a worn coat approached him. "You're Mr. Brown?" "Yes. And you are?" "Jake. From that shelter you visited. I write stories now. I wanted to show you one." Brown read a few pages and closed the notebook quietly. "It's good," he said. "Very true. Just add a little faith. Not in miracles, in people." "You're the one who taught me that?" The young man smiled. Weeks later, a new sign appeared in the shop window. "Bring a story. Get tea and someone to listen." Stories poured in. People brought pages, scraps, even napkins with words scribbled on them. Mr. Brown read them at night, and the city began to recognize itself in those stories. Its kindness, fears, losses, forgiveness. One evening, Ms. Allison returned. No briefcase, no rush, just a bouquet of fresh roses. "Looks like you opened the city's heart, not a library," she said. Brown smiled. "I only bought a rose. The evening did the rest." She set the bouquet in an old vase and added softly, "Sometimes one evening is worth a lifetime." Part 5. Spring came. The home for books and hearts lived by its own rhythm. No schedules, no rules, but with a soul. People came and went, leaving notes, books, memories. Mr. Brown more and more felt that he wasn't helping people. People were helping him. One day a man in an old blazer knocked, carrying a cardboard box. "I heard you take books," he said awkwardly. "My wife passed away. She had a library. I couldn't just throw it out." "You did right," Brown said quietly. "Every book finds new breath here." After the man left, Brown opened one of the books. Between the pages was a photo. A young woman laughing, the same man beside her, his face alive in a way it wasn't now. He tucked the photo back and set the volume on a shelf labeled, "Books That Were Once Loved." Days later, the teenager Jake said, "You know, Mr. Brown, people don't come here only for books. They come to remember the world can still be kind." Brown looked at him. "Then you need to help it remember." "Me?" "Yes. Start a chronicle. Write down who comes and why. Let it be the annals of our home." So a big leather-bound album was born, the Chronicle of Kind Stories. Anyone who came in could leave a few words. Sometimes just, "Thanks for the tea." Sometimes a whole life on a single page. Soon the album was thicker than any book in the shop. People came just to read others' confessions and understand they weren't alone. One evening, Brown took out his old crumpled dollar, the one that started it all. He held it and thought that the bill hadn't bought a rose. It had paid for a circle that kindness now traveled. He slipped the dollar into the album's last page and wrote, "Every story begins with one act. Someone please continue." Winter passed, then spring, then another. The Home for Books and Hearts stopped being just a place and became a quiet legend, like an old whisper every corner knew. People told each other, "If you're hurting, go see Mr. Brown. They won't ask what happened. They'll just pour tea." The Chronicle grew. Students, reporters, teachers leafed through it. Others brought new albums, but the first, the one with the dollar, no one dared touch. It sat in a glass case of honor. One morning, a young man with a camera walked in. "Mr. Brown? I'm a journalist. We're doing a piece on people who changed cities without talking loud." Brown sighed and smiled. "I'm not big on loud words. They scare kindness away." The journalist persuaded him anyway and filmed a short piece about the shop, the books, the tea, and the people who came. No one expected that a week later the video would be everywhere. Letters arrived from other towns. "We want to make our own home for books and hearts. Could we get a copy of the Chronicle? Thanks for reminding us. Kindness isn't news. It's human nature." At first, Brown was overwhelmed. Then boxes of books started coming, along with letters and children's drawings. The city council proposed opening branches in schools, parks, hospitals. He stood in the doorway watching people carry boxes and flowers, feeling something rise in his chest. Not pride, but gratitude. "You know," he told Jake, "none of this started because of a book or me." "Then what?" Jake asked. "Because of $1 and a girl with fading roses." He looked toward the window, and for a moment he could have sworn he saw a pink ribbon flicker past the glass. Part 6. A year went by. Letters came from across the country, sometimes with photos. Small rooms, bookshelves, kettles, hand-painted signs, all with the same words: Home for Books and Hearts. Invitations arrived too, from kids, teachers, nurses, even inmates up north. "We read aloud here. We want people to remember we're still people." He hesitated to leave, afraid the home would stop breathing without him. But Jake said, "Sometimes to keep kindness alive, you have to let it go farther." And so Brown set out. An old suitcase, a couple of books, a notebook, and the smile that had become his calling card. In every city he found the same light. Somewhere the home was a classroom where children wrote letters to their future selves. Somewhere it was a hospital library where volunteers read to patients. In a small seaside town, an elderly woman showed him a display that read, "Dedicated to Mr. Brown, the man who reminded us that warmth doesn't end with the last dollar." He stood before it a long time, feeling a quiet gratitude bloom inside. That evening on a train, he opened his old notebook. On the first page it said, "Every story begins with one act." He turned the page and added, "And it continues with those who believe kindness is contagious." The train carried him on. Lights flickered past the window. Each one reminded him that the light now had 1,000 reflections in the hands of those who'd simply read his story. Back in his hometown, the window of the home still glowed warm. People brewed tea and whispered to newcomers, "Want to know how it started? With $1 and a rose." Almost 2 years after he'd left, Mr. Brown came home, Early autumn, the leaves just turning gold, the air smelling of damp paper and rain. The old station, a familiar flutter in his chest, like returning to a book where he'd left his place. The city had changed. On the corner where flowers were once sold, a small stand had a new sign. Flowers and stories. Every purchase comes with kind words. Behind the counter sat the same girl, older now, calmer. "Mr. Brown," she said, surprised. "You're back." "I suppose so," he smiled. "Maybe I never left. Just walked a little farther." She handed him a rose, fresh, deep red, tied with that same pink ribbon. "On the house," she said. "For the one who taught us an evening can be made beautiful." He took the rose and walked on to his shop. The door to the home was open. Laughter inside, children's voices, the smell of tea and paper, new shelves, new faces. A young woman was reading aloud to kids. On the counter lay the Chronicle of Kind Stories, now 3 volumes. "Excuse me," Brown asked softly, "who's in charge here now?" "There aren't any owners," the woman smiled. "It's just a home. You must be one of those who helped build it." He nodded. He didn't say who he was. He simply sat by the window where he used to read and listened. Outside, the rain began. Drops tapped the glass like applause from beyond time. He took out his notebook and wrote, "When kindness becomes a habit, it no longer needs an author." That evening, leaving, he looked back. The window still glowed, the same warm, living, faithful light. Part 7. The years smoothed the city, quieter, wiser. It held the echo of stories that had begun long ago in a little shop on St. James. Mr. Brown now lived in a small house by the river. Mornings he drank coffee on the porch, watching first light lay itself on the water. Children came by sometimes, to help with chores or to hear his stories, more often for advice. One evening, a boy of about 10 knocked. "Mr. Brown, they say you know how to help." "I'm not sure I do," the old man smiled. "But let's try. What's wrong?" "Mom's tired. She says kindness doesn't change anything." Brown sighed and drew out the old wallet, worn leather with a crumpled dollar inside. "Once I bought a rose with this. Back then I thought kindness was a luxury. Turns out it's a currency that never devalues." He placed the dollar in the boy's hand. "Keep it. Spend it not on yourself, on something alive. Let kindness make the rounds again." The boy looked at him for a long time and whispered, "I'll buy flowers. Mom likes daisies." When the door closed, Brown chuckled softly. The world kept turning like a vinyl record, and the melody of kindness played on. Quieter maybe, but truer. He wrote one last line in his notebook. "Kindness doesn't end. It just passes from hand to hand." Then he blew out the lamp. Outside, night thickened, and down by the river, the first lights came on. Tiny but stubborn, the same kind he'd once lit himself. The boy's name was Sam. He lived with his mother on the edge of town, where the streets smelled of lilacs in spring and damp earth in fall. She was truly worn out. Work, bills, the grind. Her smile had lost its strength. The next day, Sam walked the street with the dollar clenched in his fist. The sun was bright. At a stand, he saw an old woman selling flowers. They weren't fresh, but her eyes were. $1 for a bouquet of daisies, kid. Want it?" Sam nodded. "Yes, for my mom." At home, his mother stood at the window, shoulders slumped. "What's this?" she asked. "Just for you." She looked at him, then at the daisies, and started to cry, quietly, like someone who'd held back too long. That evening, she lit candles for dinner for the first time in ages. Thank you, Sam, she said. These might be the truest flowers I've ever gotten. Sam only smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. The same feeling Mr. Brown had once had when he bought a rose. The next day, Sam walked to the river. Where Mr. Brown's house stood, it was quiet. On the porch lay a notebook, the one the old man used for his notes. On the last page, Sam read, "If kindness comes back to you, you did it right." He closed the notebook carefully, looked at the river, and said aloud, "I'll try, Mr. Brown." The wind rustled the leaves as if someone nodded in approval. Part 8. Sam hesitated to visit Mr. Brown again. He thought the old man might have left, or gone to that far place people don't return from, but one unusually quiet evening, he found the courage. The house still stood by the river. Lights glowed in the windows. On the porch, in an old chair, sat Mr. Brown. Older now, his face lined, hands unsteady, but his eyes were the same. Clear, attentive, kind. "Hello, Sam," he said, as if he'd been waiting. "You remember me?" "Of course. I gave you my $1. You don't forget things like that." Sam smiled and pulled the wrinkled bill from his pocket. "I wanted to give it back." "Why?" Brown asked gently. "It's yours now. You've already done with it what I couldn't. You gave love to someone who needed it." They sat watching the river. The sun sank, gilding the water, and the world around them looked as if it wanted to say, "Thank you." "You know," Sam said after a while, "Mom's smiling again. She bakes pies and says kindness actually works." "It does," Brown nodded. "It's just slow. Kindness is like a river. It doesn't hurry, but it always finds the ocean." Sam studied him. "Don't you ever feel sad that everything ends?" "Ends," Brown smiled. "No, Sam. Things change shape. Look around. The home for books and hearts is alive. People read. They help each other. Even you're a continuation of what I started. How's that an ending?" He looked up at the star-salted sky. "See? A star's light can travel for millions of years. The star may be gone, but its warmth still reaches someone far below. Kindness works like that." Sam was quiet. "One day I'll tell someone about you." "Not about me," Brown said with a smile. "About the rose. Let them remember the meaning, not the name." The breeze lifted the curtain, and in that moment Brown closed his eyes. Not asleep, just silent, as if listening to the river carry on a story begun long ago with $1 and one rose. Sam knew he'd remember this evening forever. A week later, Sam started visiting every day, bringing bread, milk, a paper, but mostly conversation. Brown liked hearing about the city, the woman who sang on the street again, the florist who tucked kind notes into bouquets, the shelter kids who wrote their first book. "Everything's growing," Brown said, smiling. "Told you, kindness is a seed. You don't see it under the soil until the shoot appears." One dusk, Sam noticed Brown sitting with his notebook open, but not writing. "Are you planning something?" "Yes," the old man said. "I want the home for books and hearts to live when I don't." He took out a key, old, worn, the letter B cut into it. "It's for my desk at the shop. It's yours now." "But I'm just a kid." "Exactly. Only children believe in kindness with no calculations." He pressed the key into Sam's hands. "In the drawer you'll find letters from people I once helped. Keep them. They're the roots of the tree you'll water now." "And you?" Sam asked. "I'll be nearby," Brown said. "Just in another room of this big house we call life." The wind smelled of lilacs. Somewhere a nightbird cried. The next morning the house was quiet. Mr. Brown sat in his chair, the notebook on his lap. He looked peaceful, as if asleep. On the last page, he'd written, "Kindness doesn't die. It just changes its voice." Sam stood for a long time, then softly, "I hear you, Mr. Brown. I promise your voice won't fade." He took the notebook and the key and walked to the river. The rising sun made the water shine like a new page. Part 9. Years passed. The city grew brighter, busier, modern. Cafes and glass storefronts replaced old houses. Only the home for books and hearts remained where it always had. Down a chestnut-lined alley, a quiet island in a rushing world. Sam ran it now. He'd grown tall and steady, with the same attentive gaze Mr. Brown once had. People called him different things: the librarian of light, the man with the key, keeper of kind stories. Sam never corrected them. He just did what he'd been taught: listen, help, keep. Every morning he opened the shop with the key marked B. The old lamp Mr. Brown had fixed still stood on the counter. Beside it lay the notebook, yellowed with time. In it, Sam wrote new notes. Today, a woman brought in a book she found in a hospital with a note. Read this to the tired. It was one of Mr. Brown's. Kids from the shelter, grown now, visited often. One became a teacher, another an artist. A third opened a bakery and brought fresh bread every Sunday. On the wall hung a photograph, an old man in a chair and a boy with a key on a cord. The caption read, "Kindness isn't a task, it's an inheritance." Sometimes Sam sat by the window as Brown used to, watching new faces come in. Some just to warm up, others because someone said it's easier to breathe here. One day, a small girl with braided hair and two serious eyes came in holding a coin. "Excuse me," she said. "This is all I have. I wanted a book for my mom. She's sad." Sam looked at the coin, then at her, and felt a familiar tug, just how the story had once begun. He took a slender paperback from the shelf. Stories of Mr. Brown. "Take it," he said. "No change. Just one condition." "What is it?" "When your mom smiles, pass this book to someone who needs it more than you do." "I promise," she said. When the door closed behind her, Sam sat down again and whispered, "See, Mr. Brown? It's still going." As if in answer, the old lamp on the counter trembled, barely, like the breath of the past. Decades rolled on. The city changed, but on the corner stood the small building with its sign, "Home for Books and Hearts." No one remembered exactly how it had started. Some said with an old bookseller's smile, others with a child who bought flowers for his mother. Everyone agreed on this. It always smelled of kindness, paper, and light. On a shelf behind glass, under the lamp's soft glow, lay a faded dollar. Beside it, a pink ribbon and a yellowed note in Mr. Brown's hand. Sometimes an evening is worth dressing up. Everyone who entered paused before the case and, for some reason, smiled. Some left a book, some a letter, some just a warm word. Kindness lived there without demanding attention. It simply was. Quiet, warm, constant. And if you passed by at night, you could hear the window's light tremble, as if someone still sat behind the counter with a cup of tea and a gentle smile, as if Mr. Brown still kept watch over his home, and over those who believe that even $1 can change a life. And the light in the window was the same, warm, unending light that doesn't go out.